Clair Obscura is a game unlike any other. It's about life and death and escapism. It's also my favorite game. And to explain to you why it's my favorite game, I will have to talk about the story in details. For that reason, I will say if you haven't played the game, you should jump off, play the game, and come back here. Because the game is worth experiencing. It's a fantastic game with some of the best visuals and just combat and story and soundtrack in any game I've played. It is genuinely a fantastic experience that is so well worth experiencing I couldn't really describe it. It is easily my game of the year. And before we delve into it, I want to say thank you for all the recent support on the Labyrinth of the Demon King video. Just such an amazing response to it. I really don't know what to say other than thank you a lot. That being said, let's get straight into it.
Dim, dam, da-di-lam, vacarme, s'en va.
In this cutscene, we meet our first playable character, Gustav, who has something he needs to tell a Sophie. It is the last chance for him to say something to her. We don't exactly know why yet, but it sets up your first goal of the game: go and find Sophie. As you run with Marielle over the buildings of Lumiere, the city that you're in, you will see all of these buildings, you'll see all the twisted Eiffel Tower, and you'll see all of these sort of things. It is a genuinely gorgeous opening. It is one that immediately intrigued me when I first played. As you go in, Marielle will ask you to give her a duel. She wants to fight you. This is your combat tutorial. The combat in Clair Obscura is unique and fantastic. It is essentially working off of a turn-based system. However, when you press your turn, when it's your turn and you attack, you can get extra damage or certain effects out of timing your skills or your attack correctly. And when I say timing, it is kind of like a quick time event. You will have a timer going down and you gotta press the right button at a certain point within that timer, and then you get that extra damage. And as you go, it will get progressively harder. There'll be more and more timers before you sort of run out of it. It's a nice system. It's a fun little way to add some more life into a turn-based system. In the same way, when an enemy attack, you can respond a few different ways. You can do your normal dodging, essentially just jumping backwards, avoiding the damage. Or, if you're a little bit extra good, you can do a parry. A parry will allow you to do massive amounts of damage. However, if the parry fails, you can't dodge, so you are taking that hit. It is a trade-off system. And as you go further into the game, enemies will start to have more and more combos within the attacks that you need to parry before you get that damage. But when you get the parry off, you will get a pretty big hit in on them. As the tutorial draws to an end, you will meet up with Sophie. And it turns out that Gustav and Sophie were in a relationship. So they were together, and they had to break off due to Gustav's wishes to make a better world. That is all we really get to know throughout this cutscene. We see their really cute dynamic, and we get some of the best relationship writing, period.
That's for your, if there's room.
There's always room.
You know, I'm sorry that... I miss you.
You don't need to... Okay.
You go.
No, you...
You know how I feel? I wish things had been... You know, I often think... Another path, you know, another future.
Still can't finish your sentences, can you?
Yep, that hasn't changed.
Now, after the cutscene with Gustav and Soph, you will get to be let out into Lumiere. You can explore, there's another combat tutorial you can try, you can even go around and talk to some of the town's inhabitants. They'll all talk about this fromage, and they'll sound very somber about it, like it's not something good that is happening, despite everybody being dressed up and ready to celebrate it. Now, as you walk around, you will meet a lot of different characters. You'll meet a tailor, you'll meet orphans who lost their parents and they're dressed up as these like magical creatures called Gestrels. and they are apparently very violent, as this kid will describe.
Tired of the orphanage. If the legends are true, they really like to fight. That's why I'm training every day by beating up my little brother.
That's. Yeah. You would make a great Jestral.
Thanks.
Once you have talked to the NPCs that you want to talk to, maybe even done the optional fights, you can walk to the harbor. When you walk to the harbor, a cutscene will play, and I just want to show you this cutscene, just in its full length.
Esti tornere marina. Esti l'inaki soledad. Dona l'ora tovla. Alina. Esta surano taki les renoir tonare fuego verso Alina ai.
I'm here.
I know.
outside of how this cutscene hits me right in the feels and all of that, this cutscene also sets up the big bad for the rest of the game. The Paintress. Your goal is to get to the Paintress and beat her. You need to win over the Paintress and stop the next Gumarch. As when the giant monolith counts down, all the people of that age, well, they die. They pass away. So now it's 33. Next year it's got to be 32, which means everybody at the age of 32 will pass away. Now, after the Gumarch cutscene, you're led out into the little celebratory thing that is being held right before the next expedition that you are a part of is being sent away to hopefully stop the Gumarch. Here you can talk to different crewmates of yours. You can talk to Lune, you can even talk to Mayel, who will offer to fight you again. And if you fight her, you'll get this prize ticket that you can go and turn in for an item. There are 3 tickets and there are 3 items. There is a key that I would recommend you get if you want some optional lore or you're just a completionist like me. There are also other things that you can get, such as some cosmetics and so on. It's a nice little place, and it sort of works as a good way to just set us off onto our adventure. When you decide to depart from Lumiere, you will get a cutscene that shows an old man walking towards you. The characters in your crew will point out that this is strange. Why is he old? Mainly because in this universe, keep in mind, depending on your age, he should have Gumarched. He shouldn't be here anymore. But he's here. He got old. He grew older. And that's strange. He will never respond. He will instead immediately attack the captain of your crew. They'll cut his head clean off. And at that point, all hell breaks loose. Most of the expeditioners that you got to know just a few minutes ago die. Gustav wakes up by himself at a waterfall at an incredibly pretty area. And this is where the game starts. Now have fun exploring. There'll be another combat tutorial slightly further ahead, but you'll basically be led on some slightly lessened guiding rails. You'll be able to run around and check the candies and check for loot and all that, but ultimately it will lead you into a cave. In that cave, you see a mountain of dead expeditioners. As Gustav sees it, he has a bit of a mental breakdown, and here he decides that this expedition isn't going anywhere. He's already lost all of his friends, all of the people that he just got to know, his party. What's the point? So he sits down, pulls his gun out, and as he's about to pull the trigger, you hear somebody yell out to you. It's Lune, one of the characters that you got to meet. Lune apparently survived, which means that there might be other survivors. And she talks Gustav out of ending himself right here and now. And at that point you hear rumbling, and this is your first boss fight. This is the first real boss fight that has some more mechanics to it. It will have a stomp attack and so on. You will now both have control of Lune and Gustav. And here's where the game gets really interesting from a build perspective. As Lune has a completely different attack style to Gustav. Not just in that she is a mage elementalist type of character, but in that the way she stacks new buffs is completely different. Whereas with Gustav you just had to hit the characters to stack up buffs. With Lune, the difference here is that you have to hit it with different elements to stack up different small squares. Those squares can then be translated into more damage for your next spell. However, certain spells might need 2 red squares that you get from attacking with fire damage and 2 ice squares, or the other way around. There are different colors for different spells, and you will need to stack up the correct amount to get the right spells going, which then deal an insane amount of extra damage. And almost every character from here on out will have a different unique thing attached to them that makes their playstyle slightly different. This is one of the best and most genius things that this game does. It completely differentiates how you play the characters. Their playstyle shows their characters well, and I think this is such an interesting idea. Now here, Clair Obscura opens up a lot more. You'll have 2 different paths that you can take, and you'll see the general gameplay loop that you'll be repeating. There are a few secret bosses here. They're great for learning the game's mechanics and just in general as a way to sort of teach people how you play Clair Obscura. There's even a secret boss here, and a bunch of things that you can find, materials, and other great things, all while one of the best visual representations of the starter forest area is in the background. genuinely one of the most beautiful locations I have ever been to in any game. The starting area in Clair Obscura is masterfully crafted. It shows off how you'll be playing the game, it gives you a proper tutorial without holding your hand on how to play the game through its different fights, and it even encourages you to explore and shows that will be a major part of the game going forward, finding materials and different things. It also shows you that the party will have a bit of banter at some of the major locations. As you'll be heading towards the indigo tree, once you finally reach it, you will see a cutscene where somebody actually survived the incident on the beach, and then he's immediately killed by another creature. This creature is a giant tree, and it is your first real boss fight. It is the ending fight for this area, and it is kind of, again, well designed. It has a weak spot you can shoot, and you'll have to put together all the things that you've learned throughout the first starting area in order to beat it. Once you've beaten it, you will find a message that was left at the indigo tree that says that Marielle begot in the very beginning of the game, a girl that is essentially like a sister to Gustav. Well, she left for the coral forest, and as you will discuss with Lune. Lune wants to stay, Gustav wants to break protocol and go after Marielle. This is where they sort of get into a bit of a fight, and you will see the character come out a little bit more here. As Lune will be very strict about following the protocol, she wants to stay and hope that others find them, and Gustav wants to head off and try to find Marielle. Now in the end, Gustav wins, because one of the other parts of the protocol is that you should never walk alone, and Gustav is going whether or not Lune likes it. So off you head to the coral forest. The coral forest is one of the coolest areas in any game I've played. It is essentially this underwater section where you'll be walking through a coral reef with giant corals. You will see parts of a city in certain parts of the coral forest. There'll even be shipwrecks and old World War II mines there. It is a genuinely super interesting area to walk around. It really shows just the amount of creativity here. This is also where the game opens up quite a bit more. From optional encounters to a lot of hidden loot that you can find and items to find, it is where the game opens up a little bit more to give you a little bit more freedom to explore and find your own secrets. There are even multiple secret boss fights to find here. I think it is a really cool little area. I really enjoy the coral forest. However, that is not to get off the subject, which is that we have to find Marielle. So, as you head towards the middle of the coral forest, you will find a rundown old shack with a pretty lustrous looking door. Gustav and Lune will then proceed to open said lustrous looking door, and this happens.
Look, there's a door inside.
Seems empty. Let's go. Someone lives here.
Welcome to the manor. It is one of the central locations within Clair Obscura and hides quite a bit of the story in plain sight. There will be multiple secrets that you can find within the manor, but for now, your goal is just to head up the stairs and look for Marielle. And you will notice an open door, and as you go through the door, you will see Marielle. Gustav and Lune will run in and they'll find out it's actually Marielle. It's not just some illusion or anything like that. Which is great. They'll get the reunion with a cute little hug, and they'll talk a little bit about how happy they are to all see each other again and whatnot. It's cute. It's nice. After the reunion, there will be a menacing approaching shadow from outside. As the shadow grows closer, you will see it is an enemy creature that is shaped like a man. Now, within Expedition 33, they'll call these enemies Nevrons. And this Nevron is shaped entirely like a man, but without his face. It will not harm you, and as it's being presented, it's called the Curator. Now, the curious thing about the Curator is that he won't attack despite being an enemy, despite being a Nevron. Usually they just attack on sight, but this guy doesn't. As you're trying to leave, the Curator will block your path. He will want a duel with the party. And he will do a lot of cool things. He will be your new tutorial for one other move, that being jumping. Whenever he will have this sort of thing appear on the screen, it's a little square that's slightly tilted, and he'll swipe across the floor. You'll have to jump over the attack, which then opens him up for an attack immediately following that. And after beating the curator, you will be allowed to be let out into the world again and explore more of the coral forest. However, before you leave, the curator will be joining you back at your camp. He will now be the place where you can upgrade your weapon and characters. If you've gotten any color of Lumiere, you can now go and upgrade your characters using them, allowing them to equip more pictos. As you exit the mansion, you'll get probably the most dramatic entrance for any merchant in any game I have ever played. I'll just let you see the beginning of this.
We should go to the manor and maybe learn something.
Yeah, or we could get back to the indigo tree.
Neko's usually here. I wonder where...
Now within this cutscene, Noko will refer to Gustav and Lune as Neverons. He will also refuse to tell Lune anything about where she can see more Gestrels. Gustav will also mention that there's no time to see more Gestrels. What, are you crazy? We have a paintress to go and meet. Noko takes note of that and mentions how they're planning to get to the paintress, because there's a sea between here and the paintress. And that sets up the new problem. How do you cross the sea? Luckily, after Mayel insults him, calls him a broomhead, he thinks it's funny, and he will relent and then say that they can ask Golda, the chief, which he'll refer to as the chef, within their village that is located in the ancient sanctuary, which is within the red forest on the map. So that sets up your next goal. The party has to go and find this red forest and find the village chef. And this is also where the Flying Waters area or the Coral Forest really opens up quite a lot. As from here, there will be multiple different things you can do. Of course, you can progress like normal, but there will be multiple unique encounters that you can find, loot to pick up, items to pick up, secret boss fights, and so on. It's also just a really beautiful place to explore. I love this fucking area. I know I was harping on it before, but I really genuinely love this area. I love underwater, and I love the flying fish and all that. I think it's great. As you explore Flying Waters, you will eventually stumble upon a flower field where there's a bunch of red and white flower petals scattered about the ground, and in the middle there's a singular red flower. There will play a cutscene where you can see a Neveron that sort of stalks you. He's looking at you from the shadows. And as Gustav approaches this singular red flower and touches it, he will attack, as it is heavily implied that he would not have attacked at all if you didn't attempt to pick the flower. Now, the boss fight is with Globlu. Globlu is your boss fight for this area, and he has a new interesting mechanic in mind. He will occasionally spawn flowers that you have to shoot, otherwise he'll get some health back. So you can use your free aim to shoot the flowers, and this is sort of a running theme with the boss fights as well. Just like your characters, the boss fights will introduce more different mechanics other than just parrying or dodging or jumping. It's a really interesting system that I, again, really enjoy, and it spices up quite a few of the boss fights where it's in. As the boss gets defeated, Lune will comment that he wasn't gonna attack unless we picked the flower. And as this moment of hesitation happens, the boss jumps away and escapes. But the path is clear and the party continues towards the Gestrel village, which means going into the Red Forest. One of the things about the Red Forest, outside of it just being a literal red forest, is that there is these weird wooden machines everywhere. As you enter it, you will start to hear some weird noises and whatnot. When you get just a little bit in, there's an alarm that will start to sound, and there will be this intruder alert. And it will be shown that the Gestrels are roaming this area, and they think you are Neveron, you are an intruder, and they'll need to beat you in fight. So, that is gonna be your enemy for this area, these giant Gestrels. And it's pretty fun. This area is again fairly open to exploration, and you can go around as you want to. It is a genuine, beautiful area. It is again one of those areas that has a bunch of context clues scattered about. There's like a bunch of these destroyed Gestrel machines, and it sort of shows that it isn't the first time they've had to defend themselves. They've had to defend themselves against Neverons and so on as well. However, as you get towards the end of the area, the big alarm will start to sound and they have to use the ultimate weapon against you. And it is revealed that they know that you are Neveron. They know you aren't like an enemy. However, this is the one chance to test our ultimate weapon. So, that's gonna be your boss fight this area. Again, there's a really interesting mechanic in this boss fight where when the boss takes damage, he reveals a little bit more of himself as he gets knocked back, and you get a chance to shoot a weak point on his arm that can make him drop the big shield he's holding. After beating the boss, you'll get a free access to explore the Gestural village before you speed to Golgra. Now, in the village, there are quite a few things to look at. For me personally, the height of it is this guy absolutely just breaking it down. But there's also a casino area, along with just quite a few other small fun things. It is generally speaking just an area where you can go around, talk to different NPCs and gather up some world building. It's pretty cute, it's pretty cool, I really like it. But onto the main objective. We will have to go and speak to Golgra, who will mention that your best bet to get over the water is SKA. SKA is this legendary creature within the folklore of Lumiere, and apparently he exists and he can probably maybe help us get across the water. However, to get to him and not have him immediately crush us, we will need a password. Golga will give us the password, but only if we can fight and win in the Gestural Legendary Tournament. So, you pick the character that you would want to fight and you go through a few rounds of the tournament. And at the very last round, you will get this entrance cutscene.
Wait, that's...
Ciel?
What? How? You guys? You're alive! I thought I was the only one left. I knew you were resourceful.
How did you get here?
They're expecting a bit of a show. Shall we?
Yep, another one of the expedition survived. Ciel somehow managed to pull through, and she ended up in the Gestural village and fighting as that champion. But before she'll have a big old reunion, she'll have to put on a bit of a show for the other Gestrals. So that will be your next big fight. Against Ciel, you get to pick one party member who can go in and win over Ciel. When the battle is over, Ciel will be joining your party. She has a super cool playstyle. Ciel's combat style is essentially push and pull. You can use skills to apply foretell, which is a debuff to enemies. Other skills will then consume the foretell that you apply to deal more damage. As you apply it, you will either generate sun or moon charges. When you generate enough of each, you will enter the twilight state. In the twilight state, Ciel will double the foretell that she applies, her skills will do more damage, and the damage will significantly increase depending on the amount of sun and moon charges that you have. It all sounds really complicated, but trust me, it is not. It is a really fun playstyle that Ciel ends up having that I found myself kinda enjoying a lot. Ciel was one of the first party members that I got that never left my party at any given point. Meeting SK is one of the funnest thing in any game. He'll come flying through a hole in the cave, land in the puddle right in front of you, casually mention that Ciel is a terrible swimmer, and Gustav will jump on it and then say that's partially why they're here, because the party needs help crossing the sea. SK will mention that to cross the sea and carry them all, he will need Flory. Flory is one of SK's rocks, and Flory helps SK swim. However, there's just one slight problem, and I'll let SK take it from there.
There's a lot of you to carry. I'm strong, but I'm not that strong. I will need Flory,
Who's Flory?
one of my rocks.
rocks.
See? Flory helps me swim. But Florrie was stolen by my arch nemesis, the one whose every step shakes the foundation of the world, the one known as Francois.
As you enter the other side of the cave to get Florrie from Francois' evil hands, you will find that Francois is actually this rock turtle thing. And while he can fight, you will need to beat him. He will give you a rock. You return to SK with the rock, and as things turns out, it is not Florrie. Florrie is matter of fact still gone. You see, Florrie is at a place called Stonewave Cliffs. However, as you exit the area and go into the world map, you will now be able to mount SK and ride him, essentially. He will be your way of a fast traversal here outside of the normal fast travel. SK can be used to unlock different areas on the world map. There will be new secrets that is unlocked on the world map and entire areas you can explore that are entirely optional. Multiple side quests and so on. And as the game progresses, SK will get more and more abilities. For now, we can only just use them as a mount. And Stonewave Cliffs, where you have to be headed, is a really interesting area. It is essentially this rock formation really high up that you'll be walking through. It is visually super interesting as you'll be doing some spelunking in a cave and some just general exploration. At the end of Stonewave Cliffs, as you continue to explore, you will find this really dark area of Stonewave Cliffs. In this area, as you continue to walk, lamps will start to light up, which will illuminate the area. And as you walk to the end of it, a Neverrun will appear, and it is time for battle. This is the Lampmaster. The Lampmaster is a pretty decently tough boss. It's a really unique and interesting design that genuinely kind of fucks with me a little bit. It is a kind of tough boss, and it does again use multiple of the mechanics we've been talking about already. It also has a mechanic where you have to do a little memory puzzle during the fight, and it's just a general really cool boss. It will also have two phases here. And while neither of them are really worth noting for any particular reason, it's still a really cool boss just in the entire essence of it, in the way that you're fighting it, and in its theme of being lamp focused. Essentially, the Lampmaster will light up random lamps and you'll have to sort of shoot along, follow the one that he lights up the first. That will be that sort of a puzzle, and if you don't, he'll get some boss, he'll do some damage and all of that sort of thing. It's a fun fight. However, the really interesting thing and the reason why the Lampmaster stands out happens after the fight. You see, after this fight, you'll see a cutscene where the white-haired man from the beach is walking towards Gustav. The rest of the party has already leapt off. They think the fighting is done. Gustav and Marielle was just staying up there to reminisce about their adventure and get ready for the next chapter of it. However, the white-haired man from the beach starts walking towards them. And as he does, you'll enter another fight. This time, it's an unwinnable fight. You will just be beating the white-haired man for as long as you can, or rather for roughly 4 turns, before the fight will automatically end. As he will kill Gustav. And as he kills Gustav, Marielle obviously watching in horror, he gets ready to finish off Marielle. But before he can do it, another man comes in and blocks his sword. And they talk a bit, the white-haired man from the beach and this new guy, and they seem to know each other. There seems to be some chemistry. There's a mystery leading up here. And after that, the new guy will leave with Marielle to the rest of the party. Now, after Gustav dies, the new guy will sort of help Marielle escape. He'll just tell her to get going. And eventually, when they're back at camp, he'll show up. And one thing that you might notice now is that he's wearing an expedition uniform. At least the rest of the party notices. As things turns out, he is from Expedition 0, the very first expedition. And so is the white-haired man. The white-haired man was Expedition 0's commander when a war. And they have been gifted immortality, or at least that's what they believed, by the monolith. And while Winowar wants to keep his immortality, the new guy, Verso, wants to get rid of it, because he doesn't want to see his friends around him die. He'll mention that the best way to get to the monolith is through the quarry right up ahead. But of course, the party doesn't exactly trust him, but what other choice do they have? So they head towards the quarry. And here it is shown that the party grieves in different ways, and I really like that, because it's shown in such a good way. Marielle will cling on to the last remaining thing of Gustav's, that being his arm. And Luna will want to continue even faster than before. She'll be all about protocol and rules, and everybody gotta chop up, you know? It's time to get to work. Because they just lost somebody. And it's shown sort of in a really mature way. And I really like that sort of part of it where Siella's trying to keep them together. Luna wants to go fast. And Mayel wants to get Gustav buried. It is shown in a really, really strong light. And I genuinely really appreciate that. I think it's a really good little detail. And in the query, Verso, the new guy, will teach the party gradient parries. And there's essentially a certain attack form where you can parry it only using gradient parries. You can't dodge or anything else, and it deals massive damage. It's a cool little neat mechanic. Nothing super special, but I really appreciate it being here, and I think it's taught in a really good way. In addition, I think the game really benefits for all of these small combat improvements, but we'll talk much more about that later. As you enter the quarry, you'll start to see all of the dead expeditioners. Something clearly happened here, but you don't really know what. Verso mentions he's been battling a powerful Neveron here before, but that's also about everything you get. And as you wander through it, you'll notice more and more death and decay, that it looks more like a war zone than anything else. And when you finally start to see the end of it, you see a bridge, and you try to cross it, this happens.
Are you hurt?
I'm fine. Thanks.
Ready?
Welcome to the Duelist boss fight. Probably my favorite in the game. I just think this guy has cool points. The dual wielding swords, everything about him is just on point. I love him. He doesn't have any special mechanics or any puzzles you need to solve. He's just a really cool boss. And that's about all there is to say about him. He isn't the hardest boss in the game or anything like that. He's just a super cool fucking boss. And as a reward for beating him, not just do you get one of his weapons, but you also get this really fucking nice cutscene.
Couldn't wait for me, could you? I wish we could.
Rest easy, Gustav.
I'll finish what you started.
Now, this cutscene hits different, honestly. It completely destroys me emotionally. I will fully admit, another place where I shed a manly tear. I genuinely really like Gustav's character, and kind of burying him did. Honestly, it kind of hurt. And seeing how the game handled it was really, in a weird sense, uplifting. It really showed me that Sanford Interactive didn't just, by mistake, come into a good story or into likable characters. It's very deliberate. Everything is handled with the right amount of maturity when it's needed. And I feel like the funeral cutscene just shows that really well. But back at camp, Verso will mention that our next big goal is to head to Monoko Station, because he has an old friend there and will be needing the extra manpower. And that is because the next big goal for the party after we have recruited a new member is to get to the heart of the Paintress in the center of old Lumiere. You see, Lumiere used to be a bigger city, and at some point there was this fracture event. Presumably when the expeditions were also getting sent out. And that fractured Lumiere into multiple pieces, and old Lumiere has been lost for years. But apparently Verso knows where it is. One expedition at the very least managed to find it. So, the next goal is Minoko Station. Minoko Station is essentially a train station inside of an ice mountain. It looks so fucking cool. I really like how this is made visually. The flying train tracks and all of that, it just appeals to me in an entirely different level. Our goal here is to find and recruit Minoko. Now, what we don't know is that Minoko isn't really a human. He's a gestural. And he introduces himself like this.
If Minoko's not here, that means... slow as ever. Mon Dieu.
Your reflexes remain sharp as ever. I approve. Obscur, did Verso pull you into another adventure? New friends.
You speak our language.
We had a lot of time to kill, so I taught him.
Ladies, could I interest you in a duel?
Now, we'll have to duel Minoko before we can recruit him. And I genuinely really enjoy that the game keeps this story so straight. These Destrals love fighting. That is their entire world. So it makes perfect sense for Minoko to immediately want to duel us. I just really like that little detail. I think it's super cool to see a game that really holds it that hard in focus. And I think it's a great thing to see. Now, after the duel, there's no time to celebrate. Minoko comes running in, screaming that there is a stalactite on the loose. Essentially, a stalactite is a very big icy Nevron, and the party along with Monaco will go out to investigate. And Monaco, being a Gastral who loves his fights and all that, will give the honor of fighting this great Nevron to us. Now, beating the Nevron gets to a pretty funny cutscene. Essentially, Minoko collects the feet of dead Nevrons, so he will go in there and yoink those pinkies. Now, after yoinking the piggies of the Nevron, it is explained that the reason why he collects the feet of Nevrons is because he can transform into any Nevron that he has the feet of. So with this stalactite, he can transform into a stalactite, and that becomes the way you play Minoko. A super interesting playstyle for the record, as every time you beat an enemy, you get another skill added to your arsenal. It is that in addition with this wheel, almost looking like a game wheel, that you can spin a set amount of turns every turn you have. So every time you attack, it might switch 3 places on either side. And they each have different buffs depending on the skill that you use and so on. It's a really interesting system, and one that I genuinely find to be one of my favorite playstyles in the entire game. I think it is just such a fun way to play the game. Now, Minoko is initially a little bit hesitant to go along, but at the end agrees anyway. So, we will be headed towards Old Lumiere and finding the heart of the Paintress. Now, Old Lumiere, being a destroyed city, is also super interesting to explore, as you will see old buildings from Lumiere. You will also get to experience how the city sort of was supposed to be, and you can really get a picture of how it could have all been if it was still put together. Unfortunately, very early on in your exploration through Old Lumiere, 2 buildings will block your way. And Verso will ask Minoko to show his powers off and get rid of them. And well, this happens.
We'll need a way forward.
The heart is in the center of the city. All right? Show off a bit, Minoko.
Just admit you can't do it yourself.
Minoko! Why the hell did you...
Sorry, I fucked up. I just wanted to show off.
We just have to regroup. The others should be fine. Verso said the heart is in the center of Old Lumiere, right?
Right. Okay, Minoko. Stop crying. We have to move.
Yes, sorry.
Now, after this little stunt, you will be split up into two. There's a party consisting of Lune, Ciel, and Monaco, and one consisting of Mayel and Verso. And everything will be pretty business as usual. Essentially, you will start out as playing as the party with Lune, Monaco, and Ciel, and the other party consisting of Mayel and Verso later. And the business is basically just the same as ever. You will explore the city, you will find loot, you will do some battles, maybe even find some secrets, and at the end of it, you will get a pretty interesting cutscene. You see, even in the cutscene, business is just going as usual. They're finding the Neverons, everything is going so well. That is until Lune discovers a journal from Expedition 58, the one that Verso had also been traveling with. And something in that journal genuinely seems to upset Lune a lot, and she starts to worry for Mayel's safety as long as she's with Verso. And that is where you switch over to playing as Mayel and Verso. Now, upon reaching the manor, a door will open for Mayel, and the paintress will come out. Now, Verso will immediately attempt to attack this door and be unsuccessful as there's a barrier between him and the paintress that you just can't hit through. And behind the paintress, there is a character I haven't mentioned. It is this masked girl. She looks kinda like Mayel, but also not really. And she's been visiting Mayel periodically throughout the game. And she's standing holding on to the paintress. However, the much bigger issue right now is that out of the door walks Renoir. And he starts to talk to Verso. And it is revealed that Verso is Renoir's son. Now, as that is revealed, a lightning strike will be flung from across the distance, hitting straight at Renoir, who will block it with his barrier. It's the rest of the party. They have also arrived, and Lune will waste no time in confronting Verso on his bullshit. However, there's no time to discuss the family relations right now, as Verso will also remark, as it is time to fight Renoir. Now, the fight against Renoir doesn't have any gimmicks or really any tricks. It is more of a traditional fight. You will just have to be better than him. And honestly, he isn't an easy boss. He is, however, an incredibly fun to learn boss, as while yes, he does have some absolute bullshit attacks, he also have a lot of not that bullshit attacks. And it can often feel really satisfying to learn a fight like this. Especially with his big lasers and his general swipes, he is a really good mid-level learning boss. It is just another example of how Expedition 33 really carries like its balancing. It is done incredibly well, but I feel like very often in this middle section of the game, I get a fight that is perfectly tailor-suited for it. It tests my ability on the things that I've learned so far, without really feeling like it pushes me to my absolute limit. And I think that's really fucking cool. Now, after you finish the fight, Renoir will try to use one final effort attack, one last stitch to get rid of the party. He'll charge a heavy attack and he'll shoot. However, Monaco blocks it, giving his own life for the party to continue on. And of course, Mayel still wants to kill Renoir, and she'll attempt, but the barrier is there. She can literally not hit him. However, as Renoir screams that she should accept who she is, and Verso screams for Alicia to move, the time freezes. You see, the way that the masked girl has been visiting Mayel is through the time essentially stopping, so nobody else but Mayel sees her. And this happens again. And they'll get closer this time. She'll take off her mask even, and she's revealed to have burn marks. And as she grabs Mayel's wrist, Mayel will start to hear some burning and screaming. And Mayel will ask if the masked girl will tell her name. And she doesn't answer. However, she does move back into the manor, and as the door closes, Renoir, along with the manor itself, will entirely disappear. It will get teleported away. Back at camp, Monaco explains that you can revive Monaco. Gestrels can just be taken to a river and then they'll get revived. However, you will never come back exactly the same. The Monaco we knew is gone. Furthermore, getting and destroying the Paintress's heart was sort of the goal, to even get to the monolith, and now they can't do that, so what's the plan? Well, in the Expedition 50H journal, apparently Lune found out that the curator, the guy that's been helping us by upgrading our gear throughout the game, well, apparently he might be able to do a few things. As it is revealed, if you take down a few Axons, these big, almost godlike creatures, you can use their hearts to forge a strong enough weapon to break through the barrier. So, that is our next goal. Verso will protest and think this is stupid, nobody can do that, and he couldn't even do it, and he can't die. However, it seems to be the only shot, and the party is up for it. So we'll have to take down these two Axons. Now there will be one that is focused on charming and all of that, and there will be one that has a focus on emotions. The one that has to focus on emotions, I think, is the genuine, easier to do one, and the charm one is the harder. So we'll be starting with the emotion one, the one that is based and themed around emotions. Now in the first Axon, the gimmick here is that each area of the island that you're on is tied to a different emotion. One being sadness, one being joy, and the last being anger. And there is a slight boss fight, mini boss fight tied to each of those areas before you can unlock the main one. Or rather, you can go directly for the main boss fight, it'll just be a lot harder. So you want to go through the entire area, clear each of the different masks and the different faces, and then you can go back and fight the actual boss. The action here is decently difficult. It is a pretty fun fight that is focused a lot around masking and hiding your own emotions, and you will essentially have to attack this big creature and have to avoid all of these attacks. There isn't really a big gimmick to the fight itself more than that, and it is really a good fight. It is genuinely really enjoyable, and it's one of the few moments in this game where you get to take something that seems to be the size of an actual fucking mountain. It's really great, and I genuinely really love the fight itself. After taking it down, the only one who, for some reason, the curator will talk to is Mayel. Mayel is the only one who can give the heart to him, so she does. And that is one down, and then there's one to go. The next action is in a giant coliseum, and you will have to traverse the entire thing to get down to it. Throughout it, you will see everything is made out of silk. They're all dancing and moving in the wind, and the action is explained to have a really powerful aura around it. It can essentially charm you into completely losing your mind. And that is sort of the general gimmick here. Again, you can choose to make this fight slightly easier. It is not a forced thing. In my very first playthrough I didn't do it, in my second I did. It, in my opinion, didn't make that big of a difference, but maybe it does and I just didn't notice it. But essentially, this one is also beatable. And after you have beaten both, you get the Barrier Breaker Rapier for Mayel. And as the name suggests, you can use it to break the barrier leading up to the monolith. Now, as you enter the monolith and you run all the way up to the Paintress, you will get into the boss fight against the Paintress. However, curiously, you won't be able to damage her at all. After a little bit of this fake out fight, the Paintress will appear and she'll light everybody's faces on fire. Before then, disappearing through a portal and taking the fire with her. Now, the party runs through the portal, and that is sort of where the monolith area begins. And the monolith is super interesting, as it is cut up into your 5 main areas. And essentially, the bottom part of the monolith will be the early areas in the game, and the further you climb up, the older the areas will get, up until Old Lumiere at the very top of the monolith. Once you've gone through the Old Lumiere layer of the monolith, you will enter into a giant room where you will meet Renoir again. When you meet Renoir this time, he'll try to talk Verso into joining him. He doesn't want to lose Verso and he wants to save him. And he also mentions a bunch of things about how what Verso is doing doesn't make him any different from her. Now, these are all things that will go above our head for the time being anyway, as we just quite don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. However, I will say, the Renoir voice actor deserves a fucking Oscar. It is so amazingly done. The emotions that he manages to convey, the pain, the loss, it's just so fucking good. I cannot explain it. And that's why I'm gonna show you instead.
I refuse to lose my son.
That son was a stranger.
But you're not. You're not.
You lost me years ago, and I lost you.
So you leave us no choice. Tell me, how are you different from her in doing this?
I'm tired.
So trust me. We are your family.
Family is complicated.
If saving you means losing you, then so be it.
We only need to incapacitate him.
We'll find a way to kill him.
This version of the Renoir fight is much more difficult. However, it is also really cool. And he will have this horror loom moment where he will summon a giant shadowy tiger to fight, well, you. It'll be one of his attacks and you can dodge and even parry it, and if you parry him, you will get a counter attack. It is really fucking cool. And I genuinely just really love this fight. I also love the soundtrack for this fight. It is one of the best in the game, quite easily in my opinion. And that is saying quite a bit, as this game has such a good soundtrack. But again, we'll talk about that later when we get there. But my god, this fight is so cool. As you destroy the last bit of Renoir's health pool, the curator will appear. He'll take Mael's hand and guide it over to Renoir's chest, where Renoir will look at the curator and say that he loves them too. And then Mael and the curator will go march him. Now, Lune seems to be more shocked than everybody else and asks Mael how she did it. And Mael can't really answer. But there's not really a whole lot of time to think about that. It's time to head up and find the paintress. And as you find her, you will see that she's a female version of the curator. And at some point during the fight, Renoir had mentioned that the paintress is the curator's wife. And the paintress will again call Mael Alicia, and she'll ask Verso and Mael to come back home. Now, for now, it's unclear what that really means, but it won't be for long. But the fight itself is super cool. It's a three-phase fight where you will end up fighting on the back of SK in the sky, fighting this giant version of the paintress. It's really cool, really cinematic as well. And again, the soundtrack pops here. Just a really cool fight overall. Now, this is supposed to be the happy moment of victory, but the game really doesn't play it like that. It feels a lot more somber. It feels a lot more like, what is the next goal now? But now, the party plants the flag. Expedition 33 on top of the monolith. The ones who completed the task. Who beat the paintress and stopped the Gomarch. And then they go back to Lumiere with SK and Monaco and Verso. And as mostly everybody celebrates, SK even hitting some pretty sick moves, and the children admiring Monaco for being a gestural, a creature of legend, and Mayel talking to Gustav's sister and his apprentices, letting them know that he passed on the journey. The strangest thing happens. You see, the monolith gives out a bit of an explosion, and everybody starts marching, one by one by one. Everybody passes away, including Mayel, which is when you enter the prologue, where you wake up as Mayel in the mansion, this time with scars on her face. You see, there's one part of the cutscene I didn't explain. Essentially, Verso sits reading a letter from a girl called Alicia, the masked girl. And Alicia explains that this entire world that we have been in is in a painting. And the painting is a mirror of the real world. Mayel is the mirrored version of, well, Alicia, of the girl with the burn scars. And Verso is the mirror version of her brother, Verso, who died in real life in a fire. And her mother, the paintress, paints life. She's the one who protects them. Whilst her father paints death. He is the one that causes the Gummage. And by removing the paintress, by beating her, you have virtually removed the last safeguard from somebody who paints death. Now, as you explore the manor when you wake up in the prologue, you'll be able to find a bunch of things. Other enemies are paintings that has at some point been painting. You'll find a painting of Eskie and more. You can also find two dogs, a bigger and a smaller one, and they're called Monoko and Nonoko, meaning that the painted version of those dogs are Monaco and Noko. And it is revealed while you're exploring the manor by your sister Claire that essentially there was a house fire that Alicia or Mayel caused, which ended up costing Verso his life. And Verso's life work was the painting that you have been experiencing. And her mother, grieving for the loss of her son, decides to go into the painting. However, you can't stay in a painting forever. That will kill you eventually. So, Wenowar, Mayel's dad, goes in after her. And Mayel is being sent in by Claire because there is another guild that the family isn't a part of, called the Riders Guild, that has launched an attack, and Claire thinks that the burning might have something to do with the Riders Guild, as far as I understand it, because the Riders Guild and the Painters Guild don't exactly like each other. But Mayel fell for some trick or something happened that caused that fire. And she's sent into the painting to get everything under control, because at least in there, she can be useful, according to Claire. Which is when we cut into the present, within the painted world. You see Verso sitting by himself on a bench, and then all of a sudden Mayel pops in, this time with long white hair. Now, I will be referring to Alicia as Mayel, despite the fact that Mayel is Alicia. I will refer to her as Mayel just to make things easier. Here, you will go and talk to Mayel's dad, the curator, or Wenowar, the real one, as he is in the process of destroying the entire world, the painting that is. Because he fears that Mayel and her mom would go into this painted world again instead of facing their grief. Instead of living in the real world, they'll try to live off this fake painted world. And Mayel tries to talk him out of it. That does not go very well. And her and Verso will head back to camp. Now back here, she proceeds to revive and just recreate Lune and Ciel. Because you see, Mayel is also a paintress, meaning that she can create in this world. She can actually just create and control people the way she wants to. And in this case, she decides to respawn or repaint Mayel and Lune, her two lost companions, along with a small army to face Wenowar. And that becomes your next goal. Beat Wenowar. Win. And to do that, you'll have to head through Lumiere. So back to Lumiere you go, on top of Esquier. And you will get these really cool effects and scenes as you walk through Lumiere while this battle is going on. It's a truly cinematic thing to experience. I genuinely really love the cinematography of this. It's just so well made. Enemies flying everywhere, Nevrons, the shadow guys that Mayel created. It's cool. It's really, really cool. And in the middle of Lumiere, at the heart of Lumiere, there is one singular man, Wenoir. And as you approach him, Mayel will try to talk him out of destroying Canvas. And Wenoir will hear mention that he doesn't really want to, but he feels like he has to. Life keeps forcing cruel choices. Because, you see, art is something where you lose yourself in. It's a world that you create, and it's intoxicating, as he puts it. And he lost himself in it, and he almost died. He does not want to lose the remaining parts of his family. However, Mayel and the rest of the gang, they don't want the canvas to be destroyed, so they will fight for it. Now, this fight is really cool. Again, it's against the curator, or in this case, Wenoir's curator form against the painter. It is an incredibly tough fight the first time around, or at least it was for me. But I genuinely really like this fight. It's a really, really cool fight. Again, the cinematography is just here, especially on the latter half of the fight, when the two accents are in the background, and eventually the paintress too. It's just a looker, and it's such a cool fight. I just can't get over it. It's a really good fight, just like all of the other ones. However, after you beat Wenoir, during his speech, he will also show what happens when you spend too long within a canvas, using his wife, Aline, or the paintress, as an example. And this picture into the real world is something that captures Verso's attention quite a bit. He will be staring at it, and after Wenoir leaves, he runs through into the in-between world of canvases. In here, all there is a little guy, little boy painting. And you have one option when you walk up to him as Verso, and that is to tell him to stop painting. Here you will get the really big decision of the game. Do you save the canvas? Or do you force Mayel out of it? Now, there are good and bads for both. I think giving each ending, there's a clear good one and a clear bad one. The bad one being that you keep the painting intact, which will have you playing as Mayel against Verso. And in this ending, Mayel, almost with an iron fist, rules over Lumiere, it seems. She has painted and she's still in there. She doesn't seem to have any form of escape. It gives a very dark and almost kind of forced tone to it. As an example, Verso will go up to play on a piano. You will see that he almost seems forced, not out of his free will to go and do that, but out of somebody else's will. However, the other ending, in my opinion, the also much more interesting one, the one that I consider the good ending, is the one where you force Mayel out of the canvas, and the canvas gets destroyed. Let me explain. Essentially, you force Mayel to learn to move on, because she herself has the strength to move on from the death of Verso. And in doing so, you force her to face life's challenges. One of them being that she's mute in real life, that she has the face scars, that she, at least to a certain extent, caused her brother's death. And by doing that, you also reunite the family. There's this really beautiful scene by the end of the game when you pick that option, where the family is gathered, the paintress, Aline, Renoir, Claire, your sister, and Mayel. And Mayel is holding a little plushy SKA, and it is such a good cutscene. They're all gathered around Verso's grave, moving on. And here, in the moment that should be kind of sad, it's more uplifting, hopeful that the characters will be able to move on. I genuinely think this is the intention that the writers had. It was for the characters to move on. Which is also why I believe one of the very big themes of Clair Obscura is literally death. It is the light in the dark, which is also the title of the game. And I think it is an incredible idea. Essentially, you have to face some heartache in life. You will have to face life's challenges head on. And while, yes, there will be times where you can have a bit of escapism, too much will kill you. It, in a way, is super meta and draws some parallels to video games themselves, right? As essentially Mayel loses herself within this painting in the bad ending, right? And so did the paintress, all trying to escape their grief, all trying to run away from what is really happening into this painted world, where essentially in the good ending you push them back out into the real world. I think in a way it speaks on a lot of escapism tools. We can do the same thing in video games, right? To a lesser extent at the very least, where people use video games as a form of escapism. I do it myself all the time. It's a nice comforting thing, but we can't lose ourselves within it. If all we did was play games and we never went outside or we never worked or did anything, then it wouldn't be good either. It would be unhealthy. A little bit of escapism is good. Too much is bad. And I think that is one of the bigger lessons that the game teaches. And I think it does it beautifully. I really liked every single step of the story. The only exception I had that I initially was a little bit skeptical about was the reveal that this was all some fantasy world, that it wasn't the real world. I wasn't a big fan of that initially, but the more I thought about it, the more it grew on me, and I kind of ended up really vibing with that idea. So nowadays I don't really mind it at all. But yeah, that is the general gist of the story of Clair Obscura. I have probably butchered multiple elements. We haven't covered any side content, any side stories, anything like that. Every single character that you can play as has all of these elaborate backstories, and honestly they're all really interesting. And there is an entire gestural set of side quests, including fight arenas, parkour challenges, and minigames. There's so much other stuff that sort of makes sense because this is a painted world. As an example, you'll have this area where it's just a bunch of floating trees that spin and everything. It's the parkour challenge. And in that parkour challenge, initially I thought to myself, that's a little bit too gamified, right? But it makes sense. It's a painting. It's Verso's painting. The one that he's been painting his entire life. So of course, as a kid, you might draw something like that. It makes perfect sense at that point. And I think it's a super interesting way to sort of make everything sort of, at least to a certain extent, make sense. There's also multiple side areas that I've just purely not mentioned. And a good part of the main story that I also haven't talked about at all. There's secret bosses, secret items, secret areas. Almost every form of secret that you could dream of. I fucking love this game, if you couldn't tell. I think it's really, really fucking good. And I think the story is incredible as well. However, one of the biggest standout things for me is the combat. The combat is smooth, satisfying, and great. You have this real-time turn-based system, and oftentimes it feels really well executed, even though I will say your attacks, the attacks that you are putting out, can end up feeling kind of similar due to the fact that it is just press the same button over and over and over again at a certain intervals. It's not super engaging in that way, but that's something that could be fixed here. It's still a super solid foundation, if not almost perfect, because what is missing from your attacks, in my opinion, in the real-time element of it, is more than made up for through the enemies. With your jump attacks and your parries and your dodges and your gradient parries, there's so much stuff that you have to alternate between that honestly I think it's really almost a perfect combat system. I think I found myself really gravitating more towards this rather than real-time action combat. As in here, I get to sit here and strategize a little bit and set up my builds to do some cheesy shit. I will get into some of it a little bit later. But I just really love this system because it allows me to think pretty far ahead. There's also enemies where I think they use the systems that the game offers really well. I wish there was more enemies like the Gestrels as an example. As on those enemies, they have a weak point that you can shoot to break off a arm at times. Like there is that one Gestrel that has a shield that is blocking you from doing damage to it, but if you shoot it on the other side, which isn't a crit but it's still a hit, you can then have a recoil back so you see its weak point, then you shoot the weak point to break off the arm that is holding the shield. I love small things like that. I think these touches are what really, in my opinion, makes up the majority of the early game. I wish there was more of this. I am a really big fan of how the game plays otherwise though. I also think another small nitpick that I have is just the complete disabandoning of the gimmick fights at a certain point. I really like things like the Lamp Master, where you had to shoot other elements to the fight and solve small puzzles within the fight. I thought it was really cute, and I thought it was really interesting, just as a way to do a fight. But it feels like at the latter half of the game that doesn't happen as much, and I think that's a tiny bit of a shame, honestly. And I also really love this game's soundtrack. I have said it a few times before, but this game doesn't miss when it comes to soundtracks. They are all really good, but there are just some that stand out more than others. There's this one that they have a live recording of on their YouTube channel, which is their like intro song, and my god, it's so good. Lastly, when it comes to build crafting, I think it's incredibly easy to feel incredibly strong in Clair Obscura. Especially once you beat the Paintress and unlock the Picto called Painted Power, that essentially allows you to hit above 9,999 damage, as at that point, you will be hitting towards the 1-200,000 damage marks eventually. And certain builds will get you there faster than others, but the way that they've done it with the Call of Lumiere system, essentially being able to upgrade the amount of Pictos you can have equipped at once to an infinite amount, makes it so that you can virtually make your characters complete damage dealers, all of them. And you can, matter of fact, end almost every fight in the game within 1 or 2 turns. It's just incredible what you can do with the Picto system. And on one hand, I like it early on. But I think as I progressed throughout the game, I would have liked a little bit more limitation, and as for me, it felt like by the large end of the game, when I was fighting the secret quote-unquote hardest boss and all that, I almost could have a virtual infinite amount of Pictos on the 3 characters I like playing at, that be like my Yell, CL, and Monaco. I really enjoyed those characters. And I also really enjoyed the fact that every character had their own playstyle despite it being turn-based. It wasn't just a case of, oh, this character uses fire attacks or something. No, it was much more in-depth with having their own buffs and debuff systems and all of that. Super cool stuff. Really fucking love this game. Like I said, the combat is genuinely fantastic. And so is the rest of the game. Visually, there's just nothing like Clair Obscura out there, period. I haven't been able to find a single game that reminds me of it visually in any way. And that is kind of impressive with the amount of games that I've consumed at this point. I love Clair Obscura. For me, it is easily the best game of the year. There is no game that is coming out, will come out, or has come out that can beat it. It's as simple as that. I love Clair Obscura. From the story of its development, it being a game that is consistent of a bunch of people who used to work for Ubisoft, then got laid off, formed their own studio, hired a writer off Reddit, found their like fucking soundtrack guy from SoundCloud. Like, there's so many small things that came together to make Clair Obscura such a unique game. A game that I don't think I'll ever see anything that is quite like. From all of the stories of the small team to its very low budget in comparison to these bloated AAA games, and the fact that it is being sold for less than $60, I think is just all incredible stuff. I genuinely really like Clair Obscura. Like I said, I think it is the best game that is out this year. And I really have to say, if there's one game that I can recommend you play, then it's Clair Obscura. Normally, I always say that I don't really like the idea of people taking my videos as a sort of recommendation on what you should and shouldn't play. I consider this more of just me talking about it. But Clair Obscura is the one exception. You should play this. You should absolutely play this. It is a fantastic game. It is a complete masterpiece in game design, audio design, storytelling, everything like that. It doesn't matter if you like action games, or you don't like turn-based, or you don't like games at all. Clair Obscura is worth experiencing. And I cannot describe to you how good this game is. I really cannot. And that also brings me to the fact that one of the reasons why this video took so fucking long in coming out is that I've had a lot of thoughts on Clair Obscura. Like, quite a few. And I've had a few angles I wanted to approach this video at, and none of them really work. So I ended up just doing this instead, and I hope this works for at least the few of you that made it this far, and if you did, thank you very much. But this game just touched me in a way that I don't think a game has really in a long time. It made me feel things, and that's both scary and really cool. I love Clair Obscura. And if you're watching this, I hope, if you haven't played it, that you will at least give it a try. Because the game is worth experiencing for everybody. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found something useful here, or if you enjoyed just listening to me, that's also fine. If you can, and if you enjoyed your time here, please leave a follow, like the video, all of that good stuff. You know how the algorithm works. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.